Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast, home of the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet. Get it at Race4thePrize.com. Today is a homework session, one of several in the Xfinity series. It's been a while since November. You probably clocked out and things have changed. Time to get back up to speed, and I'll help you get through the gears as I get through the gears myself and do a little bit of homework on my own, so there may be some tangents because I'm exploring new information. We may get off the path a couple times because I'm researching along with you. So if you want something scripted and directly to you, that's not happening here. We'll do our best in this series to go over the changes. But first, remember, the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet. Yes, you can make your own spreadsheet. Yes, you can scrape your own data. Yes, you can spend 5-10 hours a week doing that. Or you can pay me to do it for you. And that money goes to a good cause. You support my family. It's one of the many hustles I do to pay the bills, take care of my kid. And I greatly appreciate your support and your support over all these years. $20 for February. You don't have to do any scraping. You don't have to do any spreadsheet. I do everything for you. I get you all the practice data. I cook you the meal. You eat it. Anybody can make a pizza. But you still order pizza, order the pizza. Where are we at this year? The 00 car. We'll run through the cars in the order of their number. Simple way to go about it. So the 00, no longer technically Stewart Haas. It's Haas Factory, but it really wasn't very much associated with Tony Stewart in the past. Anyway, I believe the equipment's going to be pretty much the same. I don't know how much Haas is invested in NASCAR anymore other than just trying to have a foot in place. Obviously, much of their funding is going to go to F1 and there are other enterprises, but I don't strongly believe that Haas is at least as competitively invested as a JGR or a Junior Motorsports. They're not a team that I really expect is going to win championships. Yes, they did win the 2023 championship, but Cole Custer was not a dominant force in that season. Either way, it's still an upper echelon team. Now with Sheldon Creed driving, Jonathan Toney will continue to be the crew chief. Cole Custer is gone. We could spend an entire podcast breaking down Sheldon Creed's career. I think if I had to sum it up in a real quick explanation, I'd say it's Ricky Stenhouse without the Xfinity success. Creed's now on his third team after things not necessarily working out at RCR or JGR. Gets a lot of great opportunities, plenty of good opportunities in the truck series. Now, you could make a good argument that maybe Creed's development has been impeded by the fact that he has gone through a lot of changes in the truck series and the Xfinity series. Maybe he's just a stadium super truck driver after all and doesn't deserve this opportunity. I think he's a good race car driver. I wouldn't shut the book yet on Creed. Let's see what happens. But if we are looking at his top tier opportunities, I would argue that JGR was clearly his best opportunity, it seemed to be. Even the RCR equipment was pretty solid. I don't know if this is his best shot. Let's just quickly review and see how did the 00 car with Toney and Custer finish last year. I believe off the top of my head they got 2 wins, and I think they were both at Pocono and Indianapolis maybe. We'll have to see. Pull it up on the screen. Pocono and Bristol. He did race well at Indianapolis with 47 laps led. So you can see the 00 had some speed at those two kind of similar racetracks. But then Bristol's completely different. 104 laps led of the 300. Pretty solid. Let's see where else. Solid finishes. Not bad and a halfway decent Xfinity series last year. Not the best competition like we had seen maybe in 2018, 2019, but clearly not the worst like we saw in 2020 and 2021, somewhere in between. So solid finishes amongst pretty stout fields, I guess. And led laps quite often, at least enough here that these would have hit in daily fantasy. 47, 48 Kansas, 67 at Homestead, 114 at New Hampshire, 61 at Phoenix, 95 at Dover. Maybe you can draw some parallels there between Dover and Bristol. Not a bad car. Creed's going to get a decent opportunity. You just have to deal with his volatility. I punched a bunch of Creed data into the AI and tried to see if it could figure him out, and it couldn't. Are you surprised? How many years have you tried to figure out Sheldon Creed? Can't figure him out. So, of course, AI couldn't do it either. And it's basically looking at the same data that we have. All right, moving on to the number one car for Junior Motorsports. Some changes here. Last year, that was Sam Mayer and Marty Lindley. Lindley's going to move over and be with Connor Zillage. Sam Mayer is moving to the Haas factory team. Stepping into the one car is your late model legend, Carson Kvapil, son of Travis. Superstar in the making. Maybe, possibly, at least he is a superstar in the late model series. And a lot is expected. And for my money, I get excited when the late model guys jump up to the Xfinity series because I believe that car and that riding style translates a lot better than, say, a truck driver going to the Xfinity series. That's my take. I don't think that's necessarily a hot take. We'll see how it plays out. And if anyone agrees with me, I think it would be Junior himself, who seems to be, obviously he loves late model racing. That's where he got his feet wet. That's where he is heavily invested now. And that's where he still races today. And he clearly believes that these late model guys are the guys he wants to put in his Xfinity car. Josh Berry was quite solid. You can go through the list. We can argue up and down. But that's where I stand. So we'll look and see at Andrew Overstreet, who's going to be his crew chief. Got a lot of part-time work last year with various drivers. And we'll look at those results and see how he did. Overstreet last year at Watkins Glen and Zillage, no surprise there, getting a win, 45 laps led. Kvapil and Overstreet together at Dover, finished second. That's really exciting, especially when you factor in he starts 26th. Again, Kvapil not with a lot of races under his belt, handful of truck races, Xfinity races, and for him to be really new and to be putting out good results. I mean, 208 laps at Dover and then finish second, driving through the field, pretty strong. Now, obviously, I'm not completely breaking down races, and we got to see, where was the caution? How did things work out? Was there a fluke involved? Regardless, here we are. We've got some Sam Mayer races back in 2022 with top threes. Got a Charlotte, fourth place with 44 laps led. Strong finishes with Zillage at intermediate tracks. Not a surprise. Zillage can race everywhere. I know sometimes you're going to look at him as a road course racer because he does have, IMSA Rolex 24 experience, Mazda MX-5 Cup experience, but the kid's got dirt experience. He's got late model experience. He's got ARCA wins at intermediate tracks. He's raced everywhere, everything. So to see him run well at Kansas, Phoenix, no surprise. And it's awesome that Overstreet's putting together pretty solid runs. Back to the one with Mayer, 5 at Darlington. Strong run again at New Hampshire, again at the 1 mile, maybe flatter tracks. That's where you expect Kvapil really to be able to lean into his late model experience. But late model doesn't necessarily mean they're all flat tracks. There's plenty of high bank late model tracks. And you can see here with Dover, Kvapil, pretty high races. Like to see what Kvapil's numbers are at, Salem or Winchester or some of these more high-banked grassroots hometown tracks. Bubba Pollard and Overstreet driving through the field at Richmond. That's no small task. But again, Bubba Pollard, again, we're talking about these late model guys getting opportunities. Connor Mosack, another kid who a lot of late model experience, puts together, but that's an intermediate track, a road course there in Chicago, but still solid results. Overall, you're pretty excited about what Overstreet did in part-time work with Junior Motorsports, now pairing it with Carson Kvapil. I would expect him to be able to go toe-to-toe with even the likes of Justin Allgaier in his first season. Might be a bold prediction, but I could see Kvapil obviously putting together Josh Berry-type numbers. Just a younger version of Josh Berry. Moving on to the 2-car, no real changes here, so nothing really to discuss. Jesse Love is back. Danny Stockman is back. It is nice to see Stockman kind of having a solid place for once. The last time we really saw him in a permanent, accepted role would have likely been with number 3 with Austin Dillon, where they really weren't putting together very good performances in that Cup Series, but they didn't really have the equipment or the talent behind the wheel. They bounced around a little bit, had a decent run at KBM, but working at KBM was never stable, unless you're Rudy Fugle. Other than that, it seems like everything was always in flux. Your job was always in jeopardy, be it as a driver or a crew chief. Stockman now, pretty decent. We're going to see, though, they have made some changes. Andy Street's no longer going to be a crew chief of the 21 with Stockman in the 2. We'll see how the RCR Xfinity team works out, but overall, it seems to be funded enough. Decent amount of speed. Really good speedway package, obviously. Decent at the road courses. Like to see a little bit more at the intermediate tracks, but Austin Hill was no slouch. Stepping into the 5 per hour, this was a team that we thought maybe at one point was going to start to grow. They had a technical alliance with RCR. I imagine they still have some sort of connection to them. Alfredo was with them last year. They've been through various drivers in the past. Alfredo is now gone. They're changing crew chiefs as well. So Chris Wright, Dan Stillman coming in. We'll look up Stillman real quick, see what the story is on him. Chris Wright, if you've been playing DFS NASCAR over the last couple seasons, you are well aware who Chris Wright is. He's burned you plenty of times. Positively, negatively. Often when he is the play to go to, he doesn't work. And when we're all staying away, it's not going to be there. So Stillman's been around since 2005 in the Xfinity Series. A lot of work with Paul Menard. We're not really worried about any of that stuff in the past. We just want to see, well, what have you done lately? How long has it been since you've been crew chiefing here? Again, not super excited about our motorsports. I think they've taken a step back and they're no longer that team. Well, let's see where these guys go. So last year, he did not crew chief. But the year before, he did do some time with Blaine Perkins in the 02. Kyle Weatherman in the 34. So let me double check and see. So let's just look at that Phoenix race. The 02, Blaine Perkins. And that was Hour. Okay, so he has been with Hour for a while. It was an additional car for the team. And in those numbers for Perkins, let's go back to that. I don't think we need to, but we will. Because I was more focused on remembering what was the 02 team. Because that number was not familiar with me because it was a secondary car. And the finishes are pretty deep in the field. We're looking top 25 back. But again, that's a secondary car. Some mixed results. I don't know. Just another guy, if you had to ask me. I don't think Blaine Perkins, obviously Chris Wright's nothing to get excited about. Dan Stillman's not really a narrative I feel like exploring. Patrick Emmerling finished the season out. Got plenty of rides there with Bobby Daughter, the SS Greenlight. He's back. I don't think I'm going to spend too much time looking up his crew chief, Paul Clapperud, but it's there if you want. Justin Allgaier, back after his championship season with Jim Pullman, his crew chief now of 2 seasons, finally gets the championship after leaving his longtime crew chief, Jason Burdett. I'm pretty sure it's Burdett. There's Burdett's and Barnett's, and I get them all kind of slurred together at times. So we'll look at the finishes for Allgaier and Pullman. One at Darlington, one at Michigan. Got that top finish at Phoenix after driving through the field. Hey, it's great. You'd like to see a lot more wins from Allgaier. And maybe a couple more laps, led races. But I would argue that last year and moving forward, the Xfinity field has been getting pretty good lately. It's not quite 2018, 2019 peak Xfinity that we saw, or even, years before that, where the Xfinity series was a real bulldog. But it's not the watered down 2020, 21 version. And winning a bunch of races, not the easiest thing to do. I would still like to see him win 4 or 5 races, but it is what it is. You remember when Bell and that crew would just smash. Either way, good things to expect. I could see 4 or 5 wins this year. They're trending in the right direction. Pullman's kind of an interesting guy. Junior didn't really want to put him as the crew chief for Allgaier, but Allgaier insisted, no, bring in Jim. And he's like, who's Jim? He's kind of virtually an unknown guy. But Allgaier knew him because Allgaier grew up with him in Chicago. Allgaier's dad, tire salesman. Pullman was a racer too, would buy tires from him. They bonded together and they ended up working together. Allgaier won his championships in the ARCA series, almost 20 years ago now, with Pullman as the crew chief. So they'd always had a pretty decent relationship. They come back together and they win another championship. Pretty exciting. But Allgaier are going to be at the top of the list, as always. Great equipment, fully funded. You like the relationship with him and Pullman. You like his experience. You really like the way that they battled in that Phoenix Xfinity Championship. To see, them overcome adversity multiple times really, really is satisfying when you have to, or at least makes you very confident when you're rostering your fantasy NASCAR team, to see this team be able to not kill your lineup and to overcome speeding penalties and starting in the back, and that's exciting. Sammy Smith still with the 8. Philip Bell took over as crew chief halfway through the year last year, leaving Brandon Jones behind. Bell still pretty relatively new to the scene. Sammy Smith also pretty new to the scene. Again, another kid with plenty of late model experience. Could definitely be right there with Allgaier this year as he gets more experience, especially as Bell gets more experience. Or could get leapfrogged by Quapple. So, obviously hampering Bell's development as a crew chief was being paired up with Brandon Jones. That's not good for anybody. Tough luck, man. It's a tough card to draw. All right, finally get an opportunity to be a junior motorsports crew chief. And you're going to crew chief for Jones. Well, at least I know we got money. But other than that, we're running a little low on talent. So in Atlanta, that's where Smith took over, or at least Bell and Smith paired together. Results weren't great. Did get a win at Talladega. Who cares? Finished second at Martinsville. Pretty strong. Now, that's actually a place where Bell actually, how many times you can say actually? Smith or Bell, Philip, may have kind of developed working with Jones, because Brandon Jones has been halfway decent at Phoenix and pretty solid at Martinsville. So maybe some of Brandon Jones' insight, if there is such a thing, helpful with a setup. But then again, also Junior Motorsports is a team that you would really expect to set up well and really devote a lot of time to that type of short track race. And again, Smith, as I mentioned, late model experience, probably was able to lean into that a little bit. But overall, you're really not excited about what Sammy Smith did down the stretch with Philip Bell. But they do have some races under the belt now. They do have an off season to prepare. Not incredibly excited. Probably as we approach the season, if we had to rank our junior motorsports cars, Smith, I would say probably towards the bottom. I like the young guns a little bit better. Go a little bit longer here. So the 9 car is going to be an all-star ride. I've got Adam Wall as crew chief because that's who was the crew chief last year to finish out the season with Brandon Jones. I'm not sure that the 9 car will have that crew chief. Because we're going to see a 9 car, an all-star ride, a part-time ride occasionally. We're going to see the 17 from Hendrick be that as well, because the 9 is going to be that all-star ride this year because Connor Zilic is going to run the full-time 88, whereas the 88 in the past was some of the part-time ride opportunities. The 9 is going to be that. And I don't know if that will be Adam Wall. I think we are more than likely to see, Greg Ives step down and fill that role from time to time. We'll have to wait and see on that. We'll close out here with the 2 Kaulig cars, and then I'll see you in the next series. But before I get to that next set of homework, remember, Race4thePrize.com. That's where you can get access to the fancy NASCAR spreadsheet. You simply are going to PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App $20 over to me, and I'll share all the sheets, all the data with you. Yes, anyone can do this, but there's a lot of time and effort that has to go into it, and you don't want to put all that time. You just want to play and have fun. Let me do the heavy lifting for you. You're supporting a good cause. I know some people may get squeamish and say, I can't believe he's begging for money. Well, believe it, folks. I ain't too proud to beg. And if it supports my family and makes my son's life better, then I'm down on my knees begging you, please. Donate to the sheet. Buy the sheet. $20 for February, $250 for the season. Yes, I'll say it again. Anybody can cook a pizza, but you still order pizza. Order the pizza, folks. Back to Kaulig. And now this year in the 10 car, we got Daniel Dye. And the crew chief is going to change on that 10 car as well. We saw different crew chiefs in and out of the cars at Kaulig for the guys that weren't necessarily permanent. Dye will be permanent. He's going to get Kevin Walter, who, gosh, now I'm blanked on where he is jumping over from. I'll pull it up. Walter was paired with SVG last year. So he's been with the team, did run a full season. And, if I had to look at Kevin Walter and say that's quite a decent job that he did as a crew chief, working with the guy that's never really run intermediate tracks or all the different NASCAR tracks, getting his feet wet. I know SVG, Van Gisbergen, why did you say it like that? He's not German. I don't know if he is or he isn't. I mean, obviously he's New Zealander, a Kiwi, but his Kiwi roots could track back to Austria. I mean, I don't think Van Gisbergen is like a Maori name. I don't think that's Samoan. I don't think that's native to the islands. Either way, working with Van Gisbergen probably made him a better crew chief. Daniel Dye, decently successful in the truck series. But going back to my original narrative that I like late model guys jumping up more than a truck series guy. Although Dye still did a little late modeling and wasn't like a permanent fixture in the truck series, wasn't always in the greatest equipment and put together good results. A lot of times when we see a truck series driver have a lot of success in the truck series, but with incredible equipment, then they got to jump into the Xfinity where they don't quite have that competitive advantage, see them struggle. So I'm interested to see how it plays out for Dye. And at the very least, I did get some experience. I don't think we really need to look up Kevin Walter's crew chiefing stats. You know what SVG did last season at the road courses, get out of his way. Intermediate tracks, he's around top 20, sometimes could click off the top 15. I don't think that had anything to do with the setup of the Kaulig car. More so just SVG always being really patient in the races, just trying to learn on the fly and figure things out. Probably could have pushed more, but often didn't really feel like it was necessary to do. And even then, like the Kaulig cars, as we've all known in the past, there are times where they are top 5 cars. But there are many times, especially when we get longer into runs, they're 5 to 10. And maybe some of that had to do with AJ Allmendinger just being AJ Allmendinger and not quite getting the most out of the cars. It is a top tier team, but it's not junior, it is not JGR. Josh Williams back in 11, no real changes here. Started the season off slowly with his new team. Not too surprised. I would expect him to be a step better, but this isn't going to be the greatest team of all time. I had a knack for not really qualifying well. One thing I'm going to look up and see, how many times was he in the optimal lineups last year? So if we were to look at optimals, one of the many tabs in the many spreadsheets that you can get at racefortheprize.com, he earned the 5th most value rankings. So if we were to look at sub 7K drivers, finishing with a top 20 score. So again, that's a value price below $7,000. Josh Williams is often that. And then we look, did the guy end up with a top 20 DFS score, not a top 20 real life result? 16 times. in 33 races. Now, again, that 33 races is counting all the races. That's not counting all the times he was priced below $7,000. There might have been a handful of times where he was priced above, north of 7,000, so thus he couldn't really qualify as a value. But needless to say, if we just look at 33 races, 16 times, it's almost a 50% clip. The raw times that he hit last year in those 33 races as a value guy, not the best value guy, but just a good value pick, 16 times, about 50%. Overall, that 50% rate is about 16th. Well, it is 16th. But again, that's not necessarily fair because some drivers, like you look at J.J. Yaley, he hit 4 times out of 7 races. And so that puts him at a 57% clip. That would be the 9th best. But comparing a driver that only competed 7 times versus a driver that ran the full season, probably not apples to apples in that. Either way, half the races last season, Williams was returning decent value. And I think that often was assisted by poor qualifying results. Either way, if he did that last year or two, we would expect, at the very least, a similar number, maybe an increase. But as his production increases this year, thus so will his salary, making him less of a value pick. But either way, a guy that we're going to keep our eye on. All right, that'll do it for session 1. We'll be back for session 2 soon.